Hi, SpongeGex here, and welcome to episode 4 of my Walt Disney Treasures Review series. In this episode, I'll be going over some of the shorts featured in Disney on the Front Lines, which is a collection of World War II propaganda cartoons produced by Walt Disney Studios throughout the 1940s. To be honest, I am not a historian, nor am I a fan of war, but I still wanted to get this DVD for the sake of preserving classic Disney animation, and a lot of these cartoons are very dated and might be confusing for newer generations due to its outdated themes and messaging, but these cartoons were still very important to promoting actions during such terrible times going on throughout both America and the world at the time, so I won't be going over all the cartoons or features on this DVD, since a lot of them were ones I either didn't understand, didn't find entertaining, or couldn't find anything worth mentioning. So, for instance, some of these shorts were long training videos on how soldiers were to use some of their weapons and such, so not very fun for a casual viewing experience. I'm here more to talk about the shorts that actually have a story or message to tell. I think the best cartoons featured on this set of DVDs are the ones starring Donald Duck, the ones where he's in the army. I would love to talk about these cartoons, but I think I'm going to save them for the last set of episodes I plan on making, where I talk about the Donald Duck cartoons. For most of the World War II Donald shorts are included in Donald Duck Volume 2. There are still a few Donald cartoons I will go over that aren't featured in any of the Donald Duck volumes. While these shorts are a product of their time, some of them still feature very rare pieces of animation and even feature some really funny moments. Some of these shorts are even flat-out recyclings of older animation pieces from Disney, but with edits to have it fit in with the war themes. They almost feel like primitive YouTube poops or the early days of Adult Swim animation, where they would recycle old Hanna-Barbera clips and repurpose them for new shows. So let's get started. The first cartoon I'm going to feature on this review is The Seven Wise Dwarfs. It's really nothing special, it's just recycling of the dwarfs first seen in Snow White, except instead of home from work they go, they're off to buy war bonds to support the war. It's really hard to judge cartoons about buying war bonds, especially if it's mostly recycled footage. I know these were supposed to be for a good cause and all that, but personally, I find a lot of these war bond ads to be very preachy and manipulative, and a lot of them sound like broken promises to a lot of the viewers as well. Heck, I still hear stories about, people who actually paid for war bonds and they didn't get anything back to what they were promised, so yeah, I don't know. I just don't trust anyone who tries pressuring people into donating for a good cause, because I hear too many stories of people who turned out to be untrustworthy and waste the money for more corrupt personal purposes. So, I don't know. At least this one is very short, but it just makes me rather want to watch the movie it's based on instead. 2 out of 10. Altogether, another one that recycles animation from previous cartoons, but put to better use this time. Similar to The Seven Wise Dwarfs, this one tries encouraging people to buy war bonds and support the war effort, but it does it in the form of a crossover character parade, where we see characters like Pinocchio, Geppetto, Figaro, Donald, Huey, Dewey, Louie, Pluto, Mickey and his band concert, including Clarabelle, Horace, and Goofy, along with the 7 dwarfs. The rest of the cartoon is a very generic propaganda message that gets overused at the end of many of these World War II shorts from Disney. Aside from the preachy propaganda at the end, the short was overall decent, but very short. It may just be recycled animation, but it was still fun to see an early example of a Disney crossover short, with Disney characters standing all together to support the war efforts. 4 out of 10. Chicken Little, not to be confused with the CG animated movie of the same name, also released by Disney. This short was also featured on another Walt Disney Treasures DVD called Walt Disney Rarities. On the surface, this starts off seeming like a cute and silly retelling of the classic story of a chicken who causes a stir of panic after thinking the sky is falling when an object falls on its head. The short still has some rather funny moments, like the way the hen's clucking is made to mimic a group of women making banter.
Sound just like people, don't they?
Or a bunch of drunk ducks at a bar making Donald Duck noises. And
here are Goosey Poosey and Ducky Lucky and all the other gay ducks. A thirsty lot, always around where there's something to drink. Now, last but not least.
This retelling has a very dark twist ending. The main villain, Foxy Loxy, uses a book on psychology to trick all the birds into questioning their leadership and rely on the guidance of someone like Chicken Little, who was too dim-witted to lead. Originally, the fox was supposed to be reading Hitler's book Mein Kampf to trick the birds, but it was changed in the final version. The short ends rather morbidly, where Chicken Little tries leading the birds to safety, only for this to happen.
Dinner is served.
Don't worry, folks. This all turns out all right.
Delicious.
Hey, wait a minute. This isn't right. That's not the way it ends in my book.
Don't believe everything you read, brother.
Yeah, really messed up. But admittedly, it had me laughing. Overall, this is a dark but funny short, and I would rather watch this than the cringy movie adaptation. 6 out of 10. Cleanliness brings health. Aside from being produced during World War II, this doesn't feel like a war cartoon. It is much more of an educational cartoon about the dangers of bad hygiene and how it can lead to sickness and bad health. The short compares the lives between two South American families, a healthy family and an unhealthy family. It shows how cleanliness and organization can lead to happy and healthy lives, while filthy and cluttered messes can lead to diseases and unhappy lives. It also shows the importance of having bathrooms being built away from food sources to prevent disease spreading. I'm not one who likes to watch educational cartoons, but I always felt like a lot of the early Disney cartoons and shorts knew how to make educational subjects more entertaining and impactful than any other source. Disney got its message across in this short, and it's still as important of a lesson today as it was back then. It might be a little dated compared to how agriculture and cleanliness is handled nowadays compared to back then, but it still holds up in regards to the dangers of disease spreading. 5 out of 10. Defense Against Invasion, another educational cartoon, except this one switches between live action and animated sequences. This short is both a war cartoon and a PSA on the importance of vaccinations. The live action sequences are arguably the weakest part of this short, and for some reason it has a lot of fat shaming in it, as they call one of the bigger kids Tubby throughout. Felt kind of insensitive, but it has some creative animated visuals, showing the inside of the body operating like a city. And keep in mind, this was made about 60 years before Osmosis Jones was ever made. The animations of the diseases invading the body are such haunting yet beautiful, well-done sequences, and the way they use the human body's war between cells versus viruses has a great comparison to the actual war going on. It's overall a visually fun short, but kinda held back with its cheesy live-action skits of kids at a doctor's office getting scared into accepting their shots. 7 out of 10. Donald's Decision. This is mostly a short edit and redub of an older Donald Duck short called Donald's Better Self, which is also the better of these two cartoons. In the original version, Donald is torn between the good and bad side of his conscience. His angel is telling him to go to school, while his devil is telling him to play hooky and pressures him into smoking, only for his angelic side to find out. After the devil picks on the angel furiously fights back and escorts Donald to school. In the edited version, Donald's angel is wanting him to invest his money to support the war efforts, while his devil is telling him to spend it on himself. Instead of going to school in the end, like in the original short, Donald ends up taking his piggy bank to donate to the war efforts. I also find it strange that Donald's angel is referred to as a him, because if you listen to the character's voice, it sure as heck sounds like a woman. I would play an example. Unfortunately, for some reason, when I ripped this off my DVD, the audio was really out of sync. Plays just fine when playing it off the DVD player, though, but I don't know why this happened. But overall, this is just another preachy and manipulative propaganda cartoon. 1 out of 10. Education for Death. This is one of Disney's greatest propaganda cartoons, but it's definitely the darkest World War II cartoon from the studio. It's a grim story that showcases the horrors of Hitler's rise to power in Germany, showing how his corrupt dictatorship dictated the life of a young boy named Hans, along with the rest of Hitler's students, or as the film calls it, Hitler's children. We see how Hitler forced his education system to rewrite children's stories like Sleeping Beauty, where he rewrites the villain to be democracy, the princess to be Germany, and the prince to be himself. It's otherwise a very comical scene in what's otherwise a very dark and grim story. Eventually, we see Hans in class, and when his teacher makes a lesson with a story of a fox eating a rabbit, Hans responds by feeling sorry for the rabbit, only to get scolded by his teacher and the whole class. Hans is humiliated and practically pressured into hating the rabbit for being weak, and praising the fox for being the dominant species. The short ends dramatically with a time-lapse of Hans now fully converted as a Nazi, as he and the other Nazis march to their deaths. Yeah, this is a pretty harsh watch, as we see the life of a once innocent child be taken away from his loving mother and being mind-washed into one of Hitler's pawns, who were just led to a grim future. The short does a fantastic job at sending its message across at how not only do dictators like Hitler cause harm to the rest of the world, but even harm to their own people. It's overall a tragic but incredibly well done animated short. 8 out of 10. Out of the frying pan. While this isn't the only World War II cartoon to feature Pluto, this is the only one to feature Minnie Mouse. There are 2 other Pluto World War II shorts, but I'll get to those when I review the Pluto shorts down the line. This one is otherwise another very preachy short about helping the war's cause, as Minnie is about to pour some bacon grease into Pluto's dog bowl, only for the 2 to get preached by a narrator not to waste the grease, for it can be used as a resource to build weapons and ammo for soldiers. I at least like the part where Pluto decides that instead of eating the grease, he'd rather donate it if it means supporting his owner Mickey in the war, who is revealed to be fighting in the war. So apparently making shorts showing Mickey Mouse fighting in a war would have been too much, but it was okay for a hothead like Donald to be shown in those settings. At least this one was an entirely original short instead of an edit with recycled and redubbed animation, but it still felt way too preachy and familiar to the other propaganda shorts we've already seen. 3 out of 10. Reason and Emotion. This is another amazing animated short, and was even the inspiration for the Pixar movie Inside Out. This short demonstrates 2 characters who live inside people's heads, a primitive caveman meant to represent our emotions, and a strict intellect meant to portray reason. The short starts off showing off a baby starting off with nothing but the destructive behaviors based on emotions control, but when reason pops in and takes over the steering wheel to guide the baby to a safer life, we see the 2 constantly fighting over the wheel throughout the boy's life. The short has a lot of comical moments, even showing the inside of a woman's head and showing like a woman version of reason and emotion, along with very good commentary on the dangers of letting our emotions get the best of us to the point of neglecting reason. The short demonstrates this best when the narrator flat out breaks the 4th wall and points out how emotions dictating reason is exactly how Hitler was able to rise to power and manipulate the people of Germany. It causes both reason and emotion to stand up and work together to guide their man to fight to protect their country. This is one propaganda cartoon that didn't feel preachy. It spoke the dang truth, and its message still holds true today. This is an amazing short. It made me laugh. It made me feel good in the end. I was really invested in this one. 9 out of 10. The New Spirit. Another preachy one where Donald is being pressured into sending in his income tax to support the war. I don't know, this one just feels way too familiar to a lot of the other ones with the very similar message and all that, so I don't know. 1 out of 10. The Spirit of 43. A sequel to The New Spirit, but I swear, this feels like a repeat of both The New Spirit mixed with Donald's decision. Donald gets his income on payday, where he has 2 halves of a conscience, one called the Thrifty, who wants him to invest his money to help the war effort, along with a Spendthrifty who wants him to spend it all on himself. I'll at least say this one is visually more creative. It uses entirely new animation instead of recycling animation. It shows how the Thrifty represents supporting the American army, while the Spendthrifty represents supporting the Nazis. The short ends with Donald punching the Spendthrifty through swastika-shaped double doors. This one may be another preachy and overdone ad from the World War II era, but it was at least more entertaining than some of the other ones. And I admittedly did get a laugh out of Donald punching the spendthrifty. 4 out of 10. The Thrifty Pig. This is a redub and edit of the studio's most popular silly symphony, The Three Little Pigs. Except the Thrifty Pig is building his house out of war bonds to protect himself from the enemy, which is the big bad wolf, but dressed as a Nazi. Simple edit, but still very effective and clever. Something funny about seeing the wolf dressed as a Nazi. You'll swear you're watching a YouTube poop at times, but this was an official Disney cartoon. 4 out of 10. The Winged Scourge, the last cartoon I'll be covering on this DVD. This is an educational cartoon about the dangers of mosquito outbreaks and what people can do to protect themselves and fight off the disease-ridden pests. It goes into grotesque detail how the mosquito sucks blood from sick people and spreads it when it sucks the blood from other people, while also showing how the effects of sick people can badly affect jobs and livelihoods, like farm growth. It even goes into the details of how, the mosquitoes multiply, and this short starts off trying to scare audiences with the horrors and harm that a mosquito can cause, but the short takes a much lighter tone when our heroes come in to help fight off the mosquitoes. The 7 Dwarfs? I honestly had no idea the Dwarfs appeared in another cartoon that didn't involve recycling animation. I do have to question how the Dwarves are suddenly in a cartoon that has to involve with a 1940s setting, but the Dwarves help out by clearing the waters of nests where the mosquitoes lay their eggs, spraying oil for the mosquito larvae, and gassing them out with eco-friendly greens. They also demonstrate by setting up screen protectors and building paper to prevent mosquitoes from getting indoors. This one was overall a decent educational cartoon, and it was neat to see the Dwarves in their own standalone short, despite how shoehorned their inclusion may have felt. 7 out of 10. And those were most of the cartoons featured on Walt Disney on the Front Lines. Most of these cartoons are very short and very outdated, but I'd say the DVD is worth watching alone for Education for Deaf, Reason and Emotion, The Winged Scourge, and most of the Donald Duck cartoons. These cartoons may not have much of a purpose today, but they were still important to U.S. history. Some of these cartoons are clearly just ads for supporting the war, but some of them were just entertainment for people in the middle of the chaos going on at the time, and it seemed to have done their jobs at trying to promote their country while bashing their enemies for morale. I still think a lot of these cartoons can be enjoyed even when you remove the war themes from them. I still think most of the Donald Duck cartoons stand out with hilarious moments. Some of these cartoons I never knew were even war-related to begin with, like the Chicken Little cartoon. I remember seeing that when I was a little kid back on an old Disney VHS rental, and I still find the cartoon very funny overall, as dark as it is, but overall, this is a decent collection for fans of classic Disney animation, especially those who are huge history buffs, especially if it regards World War II history. I'd say the only downside, though, is that a lot of these cartoons can already be found on other Walt Disney Treasure DVDs, and which are arguably better collections. I'd say the cartoons you get from, Donald Duck Volume 2 or the complete Pluto collections are much better than just this whole package together. But it was still an interesting watch. I'm glad I watched it. Well, that's all I have to show for now. Thank you for watching. See you next time, and have a great day.